It's almost dry enough to get some seeds in the ground. Still probably a day or two away on that. So today's a good day to get in the greenhouse and pot up some of these pepper plants. Get them into some larger pots so they can really thrive and be a good size transplant before we're ready to put them in the ground. If this is your first time on our channel, welcome. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below and that bell button so you get notified every time we come out with a new video. And if you're a frequent viewer of our channel, it's always good to have you back. So let's see what we got going on in the greenhouse here. We've got some tomatoes over here on the heat mat, some Bella Rosa, several different varieties here. This right here, that white stuff you see, that's perlite. So Greg's trying a little experiment with topping off the seed trays with perlite instead of dusting them with the Pro Mix. A lot of the commercial guys around here do that, and we don't really know why, but they all do it, so it must work well. So we've just been trying that as a little experiment. He did it with some watermelons too over here. You see over there, they're starting to come up, some of those sangria watermelons. And if we turn over here, we got more tomatoes. These here are starting to put on some true leaves. We'll be popping the fertilizer to these pretty regularly. We've got a tray of Bella Rosa, a tray of Summer Pick, and a tray of Red Snapper there. So still a little bit to go on those, but once we start fertilizing them a few times a week, those things will pop and they'll be ready to go in the ground before you know it. And then right here we've got our 2 flats of peppers. And if you saw our previous video in the greenhouse, we decided to grow our peppers in these 338 cell trays this year. Give that a try. The thought process was, we're going to step them up to bigger pots anyway, why not get more out of our growing space and grow them in these smaller cell trays? And it's worked pretty well so far. Now if they were in the 162 trays, I would normally wait till that first true leaf, which you can barely see it down there, gets a little more pronounced. But since these cells are smaller, we're going to go ahead and get these guys out of there and get them stepped up to some larger pots there. We got pretty good germination on all of these. You know, peppers is never something that's going to give you 100% germination like some of the tomatoes and other things we have, but we got pretty good germination. And I know you're thinking, well, that is a lot of peppers. Who's going to grow that many peppers? Well, we'll grow some of them. We'll give some plants away. It's just as easy to plant a whole pack as it is a half a pack. So we just pick the varieties we want to grow and just put a whole pack in there, a few rows each in that tray. And now it's time to get them into some bigger pots. So let's talk about stepping up or potting up transplants and why you would want to do that or why you wouldn't want to do that. Now personally, I don't like to step up or pot up transplants unless I absolutely have to. Stepping up or potting up takes more resources, takes more potting soil or potting mix. It also takes a lot of time. So if I can plant directly from my seed starting tray without potting them up into a larger cell or container, I always want to try to do that. And for the most part, we can do that with just about everything we grow in our seed starting trays. Like this collard transplant here is ready to go in the ground. This lettuce transplant here, we take those straight from our 162 cell trays and put them right in the ground, and they do really well. From my experiences, the smaller the transplant, the less transplant shock, the quicker this thing's going to take off and start growing really fast. Same thing with tomatoes. Like tomatoes here, once these get a little taller, we'll go straight from these 162 cell trays right into the ground. We're going to bury these tomatoes or plant them pretty deep so they'll be fine. The only thing I do step up is peppers. Now I have stepped up eggplant in the past, but I got where I take those straight from the 162 cell trays in the ground. Peppers are a little different because they're a little more tender and it takes a little longer for that stem to get stronger usually. So I do step up peppers. They're the only thing I step up. I have seen the commercial guys around here take them straight from 162 cell trays into the ground, and they have good success with them like that. They don't have a couple wild little boys and dogs and cats running all around their garden or their fields, which can damage these delicate stems. So I like to grow out my peppers a little bigger before I take them and put them in the garden. Now you'll see all kind of different things out there that people use to pot up plants. You know, probably the most popular thing I see is people using like a red Dixie cup to pot up their plants, and that works fine. What we use, and these aren't near as sturdy as our trays are, but it works. And I don't know where we got all these. We just kind of acquired them over time, but these are like these little 10, 20 holding trays. They come in kind of all different shapes and sizes, as you can see here. Some of them are a little different than others. So we just take these, and then you can buy for pretty cheap sets of these inserts here to go in them. And there's 18 of these 4-inch pots per set here. And you just pull those out and they fit down inside these little 10, 20 trays. And we don't save these things. They're so cheap. We just throw them away. They're disposable, but it is nice. You have kind of a box of them there, so if you do need to step something up, you can do it pretty easily. So we'll just take our Pro Mix here and we'll just fill these all the way to the top. And if we get a little chunks or a few little chunks and this stuff right here, it's not as big a deal as it is when we're actually starting those seeds. These chunks in here, once you start watering it, will usually kind of work their way out of there. And I like to have it so I can actually see the divisions between my 4-inch pots there. So that's about as full as I want one. And I've had people asking, what do you use for a mix when you're stepping up plants? Do you keep using a seed starting mix, a Pro Mix? Or do you go to like a potting mix, something different? And you probably could go to a potting mix, probably wouldn't hurt anything. Just for simplicity's sake, so we only have kind of one product here in our greenhouse that we're working with, we step up right into the same Pro Mix that we started our seeds in. And like I said, I don't know that that's completely necessary when you're stepping up, but for us, it just keeps things simple around here, and they do great being stepped up in this Pro Mix here. We've never had any issues. Grow some really nice looking pepper transplants in this stuff here. Another thing I've had people ask recently is why we don't wet our potting mix before we put it in the trays. I've had several people say, well, when they were in the ag class back in high school, they taught them to always wet the mix and then put them in the trays. I find that the dry stuff is so much easier to work with. Now, if you're doing this inside or indoors, where you can't obviously water from the top and just let it drain on the ground like we do here, you might want to wet it beforehand. But if you've got good drainage and you're doing this outside, I think it's easier to work with the dry stuff. When you're wetting this stuff ahead of time, it gets kind of messy. It doesn't spread as well. So it's just a personal preference, but I like to work with it dry and then water it in, as opposed to wetting it first and then trying to spread it in the trays or the cells, or whatever we're working with. So I've got 2 of these 18 count flats here with soil in them, ready to go, or with seed starting mix in them. And usually what I like to do is I like to just do one variety of pepper per 10-20 flat here. Now these peppers over here, let me scoot them over. Some of them look like you might could pull them right out of this cell. Let's check this one right here. That one came out just okay. That one might live. Some of them look strong enough to pull them right out of the cell, but it's a little risky at this point. So the way I like to do it is I'm just going to take my knife here and I'm just going to go alongside the inside of that cell, kind of extract. Oh, I dropped that one. Let's try this again. There we go. Get it out of there. Nice little pepper transplant right there. And then we'll just stick her down in here in our bigger cell and just keep going here, and we'll get them all in there, or get enough in there. I won't use every single one that germinated out of this 338 tray. That's just kind of for insurance purposes. So if I can get a flat for each variety that I'm going to grow, one of these flats for each one, that'll be fine. We'll leave some of these in here for insurance, or if somebody comes by and want to give a few away, we can do that. And when you're putting these in these step-up pots or containers, you don't want to plant them real deep. You just kind of want to keep everything level, just like it was in the seed starting tray. There's a little bit of technique to this. Once you get used to it, you can kind of let the plant rest on your knife like that and just kind of stick it in there and get it nice and snug. And once these things take root in this new mix here in these larger cells, they will actually take off pretty dang quick. It's amazing how fast they'll start growing once you get them stepped up here, and we start putting some fertilizer to them like I said we were going to do with those tomatoes. These things will grow out pretty fast. And you know, for me, ideal in-ground pepper time, if I can have them ready to go in the ground by, say, early April, then I'm happy with that. I don't want to rush it too much, because you put peppers in cold ground, they're just not going to grow a whole lot. So we want to make sure we have them ready. We just don't need to be in too big of a hurry, and we want them to be nice and healthy. We get them in the ground. I don't really care if they're like some of the ones, you know, you go to the big box stores and they got pepper plants there with blooms all over them and everything, big old plants. And from my experiences, if you put one of those in the ground, it doesn't matter if it has blooms on it already, the transplant shock is going to kind of slow it down. So we want to make sure we can get these in the ground before the roots start wrapping around these little square cells too bad. We almost got a whole tray here. One more plant there. So there we go, 18, and those are touchdown bell peppers. 18 of those potted up, and we'll get some water on top of those, and that'll be all we need. I'll leave the rest of these in here to grow just in case we lose one. We can replace it, or if somebody else comes along and wants a few extra peppers, we'll do that for family and friends. But this right here is all I need as far as the touchdown bell peppers go. Now I got some of the bayonets we'll do in this tray, just so we can kind of compare the two varieties and see which one we like. Now I will say one exception to my rule, or kind of general philosophy about transplanting as small a plant as possible, is if you live up north where you have a really short growing season. If you live up there and have a short growing season, you probably don't want to take your tomatoes from a 162 cell tray and put them right in the ground, because you may not have enough time. Your warm growing season just might not be long enough. So if you live way up north and have a really short growing season, putting a larger transplant in the ground is going to be advantageous, because you don't have as much time as we have down here. But if you live in an area, live in the south or somewhere where you've got a long growing season and plenty of time, I think you'll find that these smaller transplants are going to do better for you. Now I won't step up all these peppers in one day, because that could take a whole afternoon. So what I like to do is to just come out here once a day, do a couple varieties at a time, you know, 2 or 3 of these 10-20 trays at the time, and eventually I'll get them all knocked out within a week or so. But I don't try to do it all at one time. It could become a little overwhelming. So we just do 2 or 3 at a time and keep plugging away at it, and we'll get them all stepped up in the next week or so. And when you're watering these that you just stepped up like this, you want to be a little careful. So we just be kind of gentle with our water here. Don't want to knock down those plants there. Just this nice little shower nozzle does the trick. And that's it right there. So that soil is nice and moist. It's kind of packed down around the base of that stem so that plant can stand up nice and strong there. And we'll just keep these watered, you know, at least twice a day. We'll start injecting some 20-20-20 through our nozzle right here. We'll do that a couple times a week. And you'll know once these guys here have kind of taken root inside these new cells, because they'll start growing really, really fast. So I'd love to hear from you guys out there about your stepping up or your potting up philosophies. What kind of mix do you use to step up into? What kind of containers do you use? And which plants do you step up? Which ones do you not? I know the way we do it here is just what works best for us. It may not work that well for everybody else. So I like hearing everybody else's kind of theories and methods on this kind of stuff, because we can always learn stuff from each other. That's what this whole YouTube channel is about, so we can be a community of gardeners learning from one another so we can get better and grow better food. Don't forget to subscribe and give me a thumbs up or a like if you enjoyed this video. And if you did, I think you'll really like these two videos right here. These are some other seed starting videos I've done, so make sure you go check those out.